The road waits, quiet, still, the oft-unsung yet absolutely essential partner. We all love cars, we lust over the looks, we fawn over the figures, we shiver at the sounds. But even the best cannot reach a zenith without somewhere to move. And the best will bring out the best. So the finest roads are definitely worth seeking. These are the spectacular Blue Ridge Mountains, rising to over 2,000 metres or 6,500 feet. Yet, despite their height, the climate in this part of the United States of America means there is no tree line, no tundra-like top to the peaks. The result? A belt of beautiful, unbroken forest, sitting north of Atlanta, south of Knoxville, west of Charlotte, and east of Chattanooga.
I don't think I've ever seen so many trees. It's quite extraordinary. Just as far as the eye can see. It's just beautiful.
And to contrast the fresh greens, we have a Guards Red Porsche, a GT4 RS no less. The Cayman finally unleashed, with the GT3's 4-litre naturally aspirated flat six, producing 493 brake horsepower and 332 pounds-foot of torque.
And the GT4 RS just seems to thrive on this sort of road. The perfect size, rotates so beautifully, and the perfect accompaniment with that engine. Getting into this car, just seeing that rev counter that goes all the way around to 10, the fact this revs to 9. What a sound! Really work the front end. I always think like a sort of 996 generation 911 perhaps. We've got the magnesium wheels on this Visac pack car. Obviously just helps with the ride quality.
The ball-jointed suspension in the RS is undoubtedly at the firmer end of the spectrum, but on these roads at least it certainly didn't feel uncomfortable or crashy, as long as you left it in the less sporty of the PASM settings. However, it's worth pointing out that the magnesium wheels aren't the only optional extras saving unsprung mass on this particular car.
Big 410mm optional carbon ceramic brakes on this, really help me on the way down the hill. Look at this. Stuff it into that bend, feel the camber, just bleed grip back up through the car. Just flows so well, love it. Through this tunnel of trees, magical. Something else that I really love doing in this car is using this shifter. You can use it like you would in a car with a sequential box. Pulling back to go up, and then punching forward to go down through the gears. And to me, it just adds so much more. It's so much better than using the paddles, which actually I find just a little bit of a stretch somehow. It's not a manual, but it is the next best thing. One of the things I particularly love about some of these smaller roads in particular are the cambers and the corners. It sort of reminds me of mountain biking on a really good trail where you can just stuff the nose of the car into the bends. You feel all that added grip. It also reminds me very much of Corsica. Those fabulous shots from the Tour de Corse of rally cars dancing down the roads.
And there is one road in this area that is more cambered and more famous than all the others, the Tail of the Dragon. There are 318 corners in its 11-mile length, and as that suggests, it is tight and testing and keeps you busier than a NASCAR pit stop. It's a stretch of tarmac that always comes up in lists of the best roads. Speak to people in the area and it feels like they will always ask if you've been there, before saying that it's crowded and there are better roads nearby. But if you're in the vicinity, then you have to visit. During peak times, it's undoubtedly teeming with traffic, but when we went back in the evening, there was an exciting, slightly underground, almost Japanese togue vibe to it. I loved it. It's a bit akin to the Nurburgring Nordschleife, in that it feels like some people love to hate the tail of the dragon. But as soon as you go there, you can't help but be excited by the atmosphere and all the weird and wonderful cars that have turned up. Before you know it, you're walking out of a gift shop with a sticker and a cap. But as much as you should visit the tail of the dragon, you certainly shouldn't limit yourself to it.
Up on some of these ridgeway roads, it's much more flowing, it's much better surface really as well, it's just a little bit wider as well, and the views are spectacular, whereas some of the other roads you're down in amongst the trees and you're just sort of concentrating totally on the way the sort of the double yellow lines weave their way out ahead of you. Up here you've got a bit more time to appreciate where you are. I just think the colours in autumn must be just fabulous. This car has so many levels to it as well, because although it's obviously in some ways people think it must be all about that 9,000 RPM red line, the thing about this engine, which of course we've known from the GT3, is that it's got character all the way through the rev range. And of course, because it's naturally aspirated, and because we've got these amazing intakes just up here, every time you crank the throttle, whether you're high up in the revs or not, you get the most fabulous noise. Some people have said that, oh, it's a bit too noisy, but I really don't think it is. I've done a lot of miles in this now, and I just don't think it is too noisy at all. It's an RS, for crying out loud. And it really does cry out loud, but in such a good way. I've driven over on the west coast of America quite a lot, the wonderful canyons up there, Angeles Crest, that sort of thing. But this is really equally good, and it just seems to go on for miles and miles and miles. There's so much to explore. And it's a completely different feel.
The sheer proliferation of roads in the Blue Ridge Mountains marks it out as somewhere that is up there with the very best places in the world to drive. You could probably go for days and days without your tyres touching the same stretch of tarmac. Pick the right time and it feels like you can have the place pretty much to yourself too. On the other hand, if you pick the right time, then you might just find you've got the perfect company. This is just a small part of the Smokies GT gathering, the biggest assemblage of Porsche GT cars in the world. It's all for charity and a friendlier group you couldn't wish to meet, with the full spectrum in attendance, from a 996 with XTC dampers to a PTS Bronze Gold 992. Spending a few miles with them was bliss. I don't know what the official collective noun for flat sixes is, a yow or a howl, or perhaps simply a family. But whatever it is, this was the epitome. But as always, after the last car has left, the road remains. Quiet, still, waiting to be explored anew, but wonderful in its own right.